If you wish to have leisure for your mind, either be a poor man or resemble a poor man. Study cannot be helpful unless you take pains to live simply, and living simply is voluntary poverty. Seneca was extremely rich. Under Nero, he accumulated over 300 million sestertii, a very large sum, as well as a great deal of property, including several houses in Rome and elsewhere, and apparently large areas of land in the prime real estate area of central Rome, as well as in other parts of Italy. He may well also have owned land in Egypt. By today's standards then, Seneca was at least a multi-millionaire. Only a tiny handful of people in this period would have had anywhere near this much money and property. Seneca is without a doubt one of the most famous Stoic philosophers. He was also one of the richest men of his time. This tension has been observed in all ages, even Seneca's own, and thus the charge of hypocrisy has never been far away. The question, as Emily Wilson puts it in her biography of the philosopher, is the following. How do we reconcile super-rich Seneca, Seneca Praedives, as Marshall calls him, with Seneca the philosopher, the austere Stoic, who sees riches as merely an indifferent thing, albeit a preferable one? Wealth is a common topic in Seneca's writing, and he never has a good word to say about it. Yet he enjoyed, or at least acquired, all its trappings. There's a lot to unpack here. There are many different ways to tackle this problem. The first way is to simply disagree there is a problem in the first place. We should not disregard the arguments of a philosopher because of his own behavior. We should judge the arguments on their own merit. In other words, Seneca's behavior is irrelevant. The important question is, are his arguments good? If your doctor is himself a cigarette smoker, that doesn't mean you shouldn't listen to him when he tells you to stop smoking. The advice, stop smoking, is good advice no matter who gives it. In the world of philosophy, Schopenhauer has also been accused of hypocrisy, much like Seneca. This was Schopenhauer's reply. It is, therefore, just as little needful that a saint should be a philosopher as that a philosopher should be a saint, just as it is not necessary that a perfectly beautiful man should be a great sculptor, or that a great sculptor should himself be a beautiful man. In general, it is a strange demand upon a moralist that he should teach no other virtue than that which he himself possesses. That is one way to look at the disparity between Seneca's writings on the one hand and Seneca's lifestyle on the other. But another way of looking at things, perhaps more interesting, is to find ways to bridge the gap. Let's look at the perspective of Nicholas Nassim Taleb, for example. Taleb has an entire chapter dedicated to Seneca in Antifragile, a book which is highly recommended even if it's not strictly about philosophy. In the book, he asks the following question. Why did Seneca keep all his wealth? When you become rich, the pain of losing your fortune exceeds the emotional gain of getting additional wealth. So you start living under continuous emotional threat. A rich person becomes trapped by belongings that take control of him. Seneca's practical method to counter such fragility was to go through mental exercises to write off possessions. So, when losses occurred, he would not feel the sting, a way to wrest one's freedom from circumstances. For instance, Seneca often started his journeys with almost the same belongings he would have if he were shipwrecked, which included a blanket to sleep on the ground, as inns were sparse at the time, though I need to qualify to set things in the context of the day, that he had accompanying him only 1 or 2 slaves. An intelligent life is all about such emotional positioning to eliminate the sting of harm, which, as we saw, is done by mentally writing off belongings so one does not feel any pain from losses. This is how Seneca dealt with the downside of his wealth. Practice poverty, visualize poverty, expect poverty, even if you are rich. In this way, you won't feel the sting of harm, even if such harm occurs. But of course, this doesn't answer the question of the upside. Again, why keep the wealth at all? The answer is that by still enjoying wealth, but also practicing poverty and detachment, Seneca eliminated the potential downside while maximizing the potential upside of wealth. By practicing indifference to wealth, Seneca created an asymmetry of unlimited upside with a limited downside. Positioning yourself in this way is the primary message of the book Antifragile. So he played a trick on fate. He kept the good and ditched the bad, cut the downside and kept the upside. Self-servingly, that is, by eliminating the harm from fate and unphilosophically keeping the upside. Seneca is the exemplary Stoic philosopher in Taleb's view because he was a man of action, a doer and not a talker. If previous Stoics claimed to prefer poverty to wealth, we need to be suspicious of their attitude, as it may be just all talk. The so-called hypocrisy for Taleb arises because Stoic interpreters and commentators insisted there was a hypocrisy, when in fact there was none. Seneca is an exemplar of the anti-fragile idea. He protects himself from the downside while enjoying the upside. In this way, he does not allow wealth to become his master. Seneca is in full control. Another way to bridge the gap between Seneca's words and Seneca's deeds is to listen to the man himself. Because the accusation of hypocrisy was a common thing, even while Seneca was still alive, he wrote an entire treatise defending himself from exactly that accusation. Let's see what he has to say for himself. Seneca wrote an entire letter answering the charges of hypocrisy, titled De Vita Beata, or On the Happy Life. The main point of the letter is that true happiness is not found in luxury or riches, but in a life lived in harmony with nature. However, those who are rich, such as Seneca himself, can prefer being rich over being poor so long as he remains independent of his wealth. Seneca is advocating here for an indifferent attitude towards wealth. Now, of course, we can prefer comfort and luxury, but we should not need it. When you come into a lot of money, you can be happy and enjoy it. But should all your money be taken away, you should be equally happy. He does not love riches, but he would rather have them. If my wealth goes away, it takes with it nothing but itself. Seneca goes on to list a few requirements for how a philosopher should deal with his riches. He should be able to be happy without them. He should also be generous with his money. And his money cannot be stained with blood. It must be earned honestly. Of course, it's not sure if Seneca's own wealth, largely accumulated under the cruel Emperor Nero, would pass his own test. It's obvious that Seneca tried to get rid of the charges of hypocrisy by alleging that he was indifferent to his wealth, and that he would just be as well off without anything. How true this actually is up for you to decide. Conclusion. We have seen a few ways to deal with Seneca's alleged hypocrisy. The first is to say that hypocrisy doesn't matter. We should just look at the arguments a philosopher presents without regarding his personal life. Another way is to deny there is a hypocrisy in the first place. This was the interpretation of Nicholas Nassim Taleb in Antifragile. And yet another way is to look at what Seneca himself wrote about his own wealth and the indifference towards it he preached. If this indifference is reconcilable with his other writings on poverty is up for debate. But Seneca did practice poverty in order to detach himself emotionally from his massive wealth. What do you think? Should we take Seneca seriously when he preaches about the virtues of poverty while being insanely rich? Or is there no problem in the first place, and is accumulating large quantities of gold compatible after all with Stoic philosophy, so long as you can remain indifferent? But is it really that easy to be detached from wealth? We would love to read all of your comments. And, of course, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.